I was 14 when it happened, and I still don't know if I imagined parts of it or if someone really wanted to hurt me that night. My name's Jamie Rayner, and back then I lived with my parents and older brother Lucas in a split-level home outside the small town of Millersfield, Ohio. If you blinked while driving through it, you'd miss it. Just a church, a gas station, and some old farms that stretched into tree lines and fields. Our house sat way back on Hollow Pine Road, down a long gravel driveway flanked by thick woods. It wasn't totally isolated, but close. The closest neighbors were two retired folks about half a mile away. Our property had a good-sized yard in the front, but it was bordered with these massive pine trees that had grown wild and thick over time. They blocked most of the view from the road, and from inside the house, you couldn't see much of the street at all, which, in this story, mattered. This all happened during October, my freshman year of high school. My parents, Carla and David, were going out of state for a weekend wedding. One of my mom's cousins was getting married in Pennsylvania, and it wasn't a kid-friendly event. They trusted Lucas and me to stay home since we were both old enough and we'd done it once before without issue. I was in 9th grade, and Lucas was in 11th. He had his license and everything, and they were only going to be gone Friday through Sunday night. They left Friday afternoon, and I remember Mom giving us her usual spiel. No parties. Don't open the door to strangers. Keep your phones on. We'll be back before school Monday. Lucas had plans with his friends Friday night, just hanging at his buddy Shane's place for video games and pizza. He asked if I wanted to come, but I didn't feel like being the tag-along little sister. I liked the idea of having the house to myself for once. No fighting over the TV, no one calling me annoying. It sounded peaceful. It was anything but. That Friday evening started out like any normal night. I made myself a frozen pizza, grabbed a soda, and flopped onto the couch in the upstairs living room. We had a modest-sized house, kitchen and living room upstairs, bedrooms and laundry down a short flight of stairs. The upstairs had big windows that overlooked the yard, but at night they just reflected the interior back at you like mirrors. I watched a few episodes of some old sitcom on Netflix. I texted my friend Lena about homework and scrolled through Instagram. The quiet was actually kind of nice. Around 9 p.m. I was thinking about heading down to my room when I heard knocking. Not a doorbell. Knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze. The sound came from the front door, which sat at the top of our front porch. That porch didn't get much foot traffic. Most people who came up the driveway parked in back by the garage. Our front door was more of a formality. Mail came through a box on the road. I blinked, thinking maybe I misheard it. The TV was still playing. Then came another 3 knocks. Louder this time. Not panicked, not friendly. Just steady. My heart started racing. I knew Lucas wasn't home. I wasn't expecting anyone. And no one, randomly shows up unannounced at a house like ours unless they're lost. But even then, they'd usually honk from the driveway or call. I didn't move. I sat there on the couch, holding my breath. Another knock. Instead of walking straight to the door like some idiot in a horror movie, I crept down the hallway to my bedroom. It sat just above the porch area, and if I lifted the curtain, I could usually see down to whoever was at the front. But when I looked, no one was there. The porch was empty, the light was on, the steps were clear. No one standing at the mat. No shadows, no movement. That made my stomach drop. I scanned the yard, the driveway, the edge of the tree line. All I could make out were silhouettes. Our trash bins, the swing set, the tall pines at the edge of our yard, the road beyond those trees, totally invisible from here. Maybe someone had run off, but I would have seen them, or at least heard the gravel crunching underfoot. Our driveway was nearly 100 yards long and lined with brittle fall leaves. You couldn't sneak off it quietly. I pulled my curtain closed again and backed away. For the first time that night, I locked the front door and the back one too. I checked the sliding glass doors downstairs, also locked. I texted Lucas. Me. Did you tell anyone to come over? Lucas. No? Why? Me. Someone knocked, then vanished. Lucas. Creepy. You okay? Me. Yeah, just nervous. Lucas. You want me to come back? Me. No, it's fine. Probably just someone lost. But even I didn't believe that. I stayed up late, unable to shake the uneasy feeling. Every time the house creaked, I jumped. Around 11:30, I went to the bathroom and then peeked through the kitchen window again. Still nothing. Then, a little after midnight, I heard the garage door close. Not open. Close. I panicked, wondering if maybe Lucas had come home and forgot to text me. I grabbed my phone and ran downstairs toward the door that led into the garage. "Lucas?" I called out. No answer. I opened the door, flipped on the garage light. Empty. No car. Nothing had changed. My stomach knotted. Had I imagined the sound? I closed the door, triple-checked the lock, and decided to go to bed, though sleep would be almost impossible now. I turned off most of the lights and went to my room. I left a small lamp on. At 12:41 a.m., the headlights of a car flashed against the walls. I jumped to my feet and peeked through the blinds. Lucas was pulling into the driveway. I ran upstairs and opened the door before he even reached it. "Someone knocked earlier," I blurted. "And I thought I heard the garage like an hour ago." He walked in, looking at me weird. "Are you sure?" "Could have been the wind or something." I shook my head. No, it was definite knocking. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "There's a car parked on the side of the road right past the trees, like just sitting there. Headlights off. I passed it just now." I stared at him. "What kind of car?" "Dunno. Dark. Maybe a sedan." I thought it might be someone broken down, but no one waved or anything. We both stood in silence for a minute. He walked back outside, shined a flashlight toward the tree line. But you couldn't see the street from our yard. Those pines were thick as walls. When he came back, he locked the door and said, "Let's just stay in the living room tonight." Lights on. So we did. By morning, the car was gone. No tracks, no signs anyone had even been out there. The leaves hadn't even looked disturbed when we checked. Lucas joked that I must have dreamed it all. But I know what I heard, and I know someone knocked. That weekend, nothing else happened. I told my parents, and they were weirded out, but chalked it up to someone turning around in the driveway or kids messing around. But I kept thinking, who would walk all the way up our driveway, knock and leave without a trace? No prankster would come that far out into the country just for a joke. We didn't have neighbors with kids. We didn't even have a sidewalk. Months later, there was a report in a nearby town about a guy arrested for trying to break into rural homes pretending to be stranded. He'd knock, and if no one answered, he'd try the back doors. I don't know if that was the same guy, but now, even as an adult, I never ignore a knock at night. And I never assume someone at the door means well. Because that night, alone in the woods on Hollow Pine Road, I almost opened it. I always liked the quiet. When I moved to Elmdale, a small middle-of-nowhere town in northern Michigan, it was mainly because I needed space from everyone. Family, friends, noise. I just turned 26, was working as a dispatcher for a delivery company, and doing most of my job remotely. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I rented a modest one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a 3-story building. Old, but clean, tucked behind a gas station and a Family Dollar. It was cheap. That should have been my first red flag. The landlord, a guy named Greg who was always chewing toothpicks, had told me on move-in day that the building used to be a small roadside motel in the 1980s, back when Elmdale saw more travelers. When that dried up, the owner converted it into apartments. It still had that cheap motel vibe, narrow halls, thin doors, and a buzz from the overhead lights that never quite stopped. But it was mine. And I liked the isolation. That first month went by quietly. I'd work in the day, throw something in the microwave at night, scroll on my phone, sometimes go out to the gas station for snacks. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was peaceful. No one bothered me, and I didn't bother them. The tenants across the hall were a young couple who argued loudly on weekends, and the old man below me chain-smoked on his balcony, but I rarely crossed paths with any of them. Then came Tuesday, November 14th. I had just finished a longer shift than usual. There had been some screw-up in the scheduling system, and I had to stay late to sort out routing issues. I didn't get off until nearly 11 p.m. It was cold, like wet, bone-sticking cold, and I remember my car heater was barely working. I parked in my usual spot, halfway under a busted streetlight that flickered like it was trying to give me a seizure. As I stepped out, I noticed the whole lot was quieter than usual. Even the gas station across the way had shut its lights. I was drained. I remember fumbling with my keys at the entrance to the stairwell and thinking, I just want to eat something and crash. The second-floor hallway was dim. Only one overhead light near my door was working, casting a yellowish hue across the peeling wallpaper. When I opened my door, I immediately dropped my keys in the bowl near the entrance, kicked off my shoes, and walked straight into the kitchen to heat up leftovers. That's when I realized I didn't have my phone. I patted down my jacket. The back pocket of my jeans even looked on the counter. Nothing. I figured it must have slipped out in the car. That had happened before. I sighed, slipped my shoes back on, and headed back down. I didn't even lock my apartment door. I was only going to be gone for a minute. My car was freezing. I opened the driver's side door, and sure enough, there was my phone sitting between the seat and the center console. I grabbed it, locked the car, and trudged back upstairs. All I could think about was getting under my weighted blanket and falling asleep to some true crime podcast. But when I got back to my apartment and stepped inside, the air felt different. It wasn't cold exactly, just off, like a shift in pressure, like someone had just opened a window, but everything looked the same. Same dishes in the sink, same microwave clock blinking 12:00. I pushed the thought aside. I was tired, probably overthinking. After brushing my teeth and changing into an old hoodie and sweats, I turned off the lights and climbed into bed. I was just starting to doze off, on that line between consciousness and sleep, when I heard a noise. It wasn't loud, more like a shuffle, like someone dragging a socked foot across carpet. I sat up, eyes adjusting to the dark, and listened. Silence. Maybe it came from the couple across the hall. Their bedroom backed up against mine. I laid back down. Another shuffle. Closer this time. I sat up again. My heart was thudding now, and not just from the noise, but from something deeper. That old primal feeling that you're not alone. I stared at my bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. From where I was, I could just barely see out into the living room, which was pitch dark. I reached over and unplugged my phone from the charger. 12:42 a.m. My first instinct should have been to call someone, but I didn't. Instead, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed across the room. I pushed open the door slowly. There, at the very edge of my vision, I saw it. Movement. Someone was walking, slowly like they were trying not to make noise, through my living room. A silhouette. Not big, not small. Average height? Could have been anyone. I froze. I must have stood there for 5 full seconds, not breathing. My eyes adjusted enough that I could make out the figure walking toward my front door. They weren't running. They weren't even rushing. Just calmly walking. That's when the hallway light caught part of their face. A man, mid-30s maybe, pale, wearing a hoodie. I didn't recognize him. He opened the door like he lived there. Smooth, no fumbling, just turned the knob and left. He didn't look back once, didn't run, just exited like he had a key. I didn't move until the door clicked shut. Then I ran forward and locked it. Deadbolt, chain, everything. My heart was in my throat. I was trembling. I backed away from the door and turned on every light in the apartment. I grabbed a kitchen knife and did a sweep, room to room. Nothing. But the coat closet near the door? The one I never used? The door was cracked open. Inside was empty, mostly. But the dust on the floor was disturbed. Someone had been standing in there. Maybe for a while. I called the police. I remember trying to sound calm on the phone, but I must have been shaking because my voice cracked several times. The dispatcher said they were sending someone immediately. I think I stayed on the line until I saw the red and blue lights flash through my blinds. 2 officers showed up, a man and a woman. They took my statement, checked the building, even reviewed the outside security camera near the lot. It didn't catch him. They told me something that made my stomach drop. There was no sign of forced entry, meaning the door had been unlocked, meaning he got in when I left to get my phone. I was gone for maybe a minute, maybe less. They said it was possible he'd been watching me, that he waited for me to leave. They checked the coat closet again and said it was likely that was where he hid. The weird part? Nothing was stolen, not a single item. My laptop was on the coffee table, wallet in plain sight. He didn't touch a thing. He didn't come in to steal. He just watched. They never caught him. I moved out 3 weeks later. I found a new place in a building with security cameras in every hallway, a front desk and keycard access. It's more expensive, but I don't care. Sometimes when I walk through my new apartment at night, I still flick on every light just to be sure. I still check the coat closet even though I keep it full of junk. And every now and then, when I step out to grab something from my car, I catch myself looking over my shoulder, just to see if anyone's watching. Because now I know something I didn't know before. It only takes a minute. And sometimes, that's all they need. I didn't grow up around here. I was born and raised in southern Michigan, but when I turned 30, I found myself tired of the noise, the people, the traffic, the neighbors that never waved, the sirens that screamed all night. I'd spent a decade working construction and remodeling contracts, stacking enough money that I didn't have to take every job that came my way anymore. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. And more than anything, I wanted quiet. So, when I found a little 2-bedroom house for sale in upstate Maine, nearly an hour from any real town, I jumped on it. The listing called it rustic, which was a generous way to say old and a bit run down, but it had charm. A front porch that wrapped halfway around, a long gravel driveway lined with trees, and several acres of wild open land. The place backed up to thick woods, and the only real neighbor I had was an older man named Jerry, who lived about half a mile down the road. Jerry was the kind of guy who waved from his porch with a cup of coffee and only talked if you wanted to. I liked him. We didn't bother each other much, and that's how I liked it. I worked seasonally now, spring to early fall, mostly doing private contracting jobs like cabinetry or small renovations. Winter, though, was mine. I spent most of it at home, holed up with books, working on the house, or just enjoying the stillness. It was late October when this happened. The trees had lost most of their leaves. You could see farther through the woods, and the wind had that sharp, early bite that warned of snow. I'd been putting off the last of my fall chores, mostly clearing the tools from the yard and moving the mowers and outdoor equipment into the shed. That afternoon, I bundled up and spent a good few hours moving things into place, stacking, locking down, oiling what needed oiling. It was good work, the kind that tires you out but leaves you feeling productive. I'd just finished moving the heavier equipment when I saw someone walking along the road. That alone wasn't so strange, except it really was. This road didn't lead anywhere fast. It was long, cracked, and mostly gravel in parts. You'd be walking for hours before you hit the main town, and there were only 4 or 5 houses spread across several miles. He didn't have any gear on him. No backpack, no jacket, no water bottle. Just a light sweatshirt and jeans. I stood there, one hand on the old gas can, and watched him. He didn't look at me, just kept walking, head down. Bit far from town, I muttered to myself. I thought maybe he was from one of the houses down the way, someone I hadn't met yet, but he passed right by my long drive and kept walking. I waited until he was out of view, then looked both ways down the road. No parked cars, no bicycles, nothing. That stayed in the back of my mind as I finished up. I didn't think he was dangerous or anything, but It was strange enough that I kept the shed locked tighter than usual. By the time I got inside, the sun was already disappearing. I washed up, heated a pot of chili I'd made the night before, and poured myself a glass of bourbon. I sat down at the table in my small kitchen, the window open to the dim outside. A few porch lights cast shadows across the yard. The woods behind the house were pitch black. Just as I was about to take the first bite, I heard it. A thud. A deep, wooden-sounding thud from outside. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. It came again, like something hitting the side of the shed. I stood up slowly and stepped to the kitchen window. From there, I could just barely see the shed. The door was wide open. That shed door was heavy, and the latch held tight. It never just swung open. A pit started to form in my stomach. I walked into the hallway closet and grabbed the hunting rifle I kept there. It wasn't always loaded, but this time of year I usually kept 2 rounds chambered. Coyotes weren't uncommon, and the occasional bear would wander near the property. As I stepped outside, I flicked the safety off. The night was cold, windy, silent otherwise. I crossed the yard slowly, my boots crunching the dry grass and leaves. When I reached the shed, I held the rifle steady with one hand and grabbed my flashlight with the other. "Anyone in there?" I called out. Nothing. I swept the beam of light across the inside. Nothing seemed out of place. Still, I stepped in and checked behind the shelves, the corners, the back wall. Nothing. No raccoons, no people. Just my equipment. I shook my head and closed the door, latched it, even kicked the base to make sure it was secure. The wind picked up again. Leaves whipped across the yard. I turned to head back to the house. That's when the feeling hit me. That strange, skin-crawling sensation, like someone was watching me. I glanced back at the trees. Nothing moved, but the feeling only got worse. I picked up the pace, crossed the yard, made it to the porch and opened the front door, heart thudding. Once inside, I locked the door and turned to head back toward the kitchen, and stopped cold. There were muddy shoe prints across the floor. My kitchen was tile, but the hallway was hardwood, and right there, smeared across it, were prints. They led straight to the guest bedroom. I gripped the rifle tighter, my throat suddenly dry. There was no way. I approached slowly, trying not to make a sound. When I got to the guest room door, I pressed my ear to it. Breathing. I could hear someone breathing. My hands were shaking as I gripped the handle. Then, before I could decide what to do, the knob twisted in my hand. The door flew open. A man lunged forward, shovel raised. I stumbled back, rifle aimed. "Don't move!" I shouted, voice cracking. He stopped, shovel still raised, his face pale, thin, angry, eyes wide, lips trembling. We stood there, neither of us moving. "Put it down," I said again. He didn't, but he didn't come closer either. "Put it down, man," I barked, louder this time. Finally, he threw the shovel. It clanged against the floor between us, and before I could react, he turned and bolted back into the room. I ran after him just in time to see him dive out the open window. I got to the window and leaned out. He was running, full speed, into the field behind the house, disappearing into the darkness. I didn't fire. I couldn't. I locked every door, every window, barricaded the front door with a table. I didn't sleep that night. Police came over 2 hours later, no trace. They brought dogs out the next morning, still nothing. No fingerprints, no ID, no signs of forced entry. To this day, I don't know who he was or how long he'd been in the house before I saw the prints. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the house, and the wind howls through the trees, I swear I still feel like he's out there, watching, waiting. I always thought I'd feel safe in my own home. I mean, that's the one place you should be able to relax, right? Lock the doors, turn off the lights, and trust the walls around you. I grew up in the same house my whole life, a modest 2-story place just outside the small town of Elmridge, Missouri. Quiet roads, good neighbors, The kind of place where porch lights flicker on at dusk and nothing ever seems to happen. At the time, I was 18. It was early June, right after graduation, and I was just kind of floating. No job yet, no plans for college until the fall. My parents had gone to visit my aunt and uncle in Iowa for a few days, something they did every summer. Normally I'd go with them, but I told them I wanted to stay back this year. I liked the idea of having the house to myself. Freedom. I could stay up late, eat whatever junk I wanted, play games, binge shows, sleep in. No one around to tell me to turn off the lights or to get off my phone. The first day was uneventful. I slept until nearly noon, got up, grabbed leftover pizza, and crashed on the couch with a blanket. The air conditioning hummed gently. Birds chirped outside. I didn't even shower until late afternoon. My phone buzzed a few times, group chats mostly. Friends asking what I was doing, if they could come over. I told them maybe later. I wanted one full day just to myself. By nightfall, I was deep into a rewatch of an old show on Netflix, half paying attention while also scrolling Instagram. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I heard a knock. It wasn't aggressive, just a solid knock 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 on the front door. I paused the show. My immediate thought was, who the hell knocks at nearly midnight? I didn't answer right away. My parents had always told me not to open the door for anyone that late. I tiptoed up to the door and looked through the peephole. The porch light was off, so I could only make out shadows at first. But after a second, two figures came into focus. Both men, middle-aged, wearing matching gray hoodies. One had facial hair, the other was bald. They weren't smiling. They just stood there, like they were waiting to be let in. "Hello?" One of them called out suddenly, voice low but clear. "We're here to talk to Mr. and Mrs. Lambert." That's my parents. My heartbeat kicked up. They knew our names. Still, I didn't respond. I stayed silent, frozen behind the door. Something felt off. They didn't knock again. They just stood there. One of them turned and said something to the other, too quiet for me to hear. And then they both walked away from the porch. I waited, but no engine started. No headlights. No car. They didn't drive off. That was the first time I started to feel it. Real fear. Not just nervousness, but that creeping cold feeling that spreads through your body when your instincts start whispering, something's wrong. I turned off the TV and all the lights, crouched low behind the couch, and just listened. Not even 5 minutes later, I heard the backyard gate squeak open. My stomach dropped. Our backyard is fenced, and there's only one way in unless you climb it. I rushed to the back window, careful not to get too close, and peeked out from behind the curtain. Both men were in the yard now, walking side by side, heads moving like they were scanning the house. Then they stopped at the back door. I backed away from the window, holding my breath. The taller one jiggled the doorknob. I could hear it from inside, click, click, click. Then came their voices muffled through the glass. "Think they're asleep?" "No, someone's here. Lights were on a few minutes ago." I scrambled to grab my phone off the couch and bolted into the garage, locking the interior door behind me. I crouched behind my dad's tool bench and dialed 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher answered fast. "911, what's your emergency?" "There are two men trying to break into my house," I whispered. "They already knocked at the front door and now they're trying the back. I'm home alone." She immediately went into protocol, asking my address, if I was safe, where I was hiding. "I'm in the garage," I told her. "They haven't seen me, I don't think." And then I heard it. Pop. Like wood splitting. Then, the soft sleet of the back door opening. "They got in," I whispered. "Officers are en route, stay where you are," she said. I could hear their footsteps on the hardwood floors. Confident, slow, not like they were scared of getting caught. More like they had time. They didn't say much at first. Just walked around, checking things. One of them opened the fridge. I swear to God, I could hear the door creak and the clink of bottles inside. Then one of them spoke. "No bags here. They didn't leave yet." The other replied, "Maybe the kid stayed behind." My heart dropped. They knew. Footsteps moved toward the stairs. I heard one of the bedroom doors open, then shut. Another opened, then slammed. Nothing. No one upstairs. The dispatcher kept me calm, whispering to stay on the line. I barely even realized my own breathing had become ragged, shallow. It went silent again. A horrible, heavy silence that made the garage feel like a coffin. Then the front door creaked open. It wasn't until the police cruiser pulled into the driveway, red and blue lights flashing through the slats in the garage door, that I finally felt air in my lungs again. "Officers are outside. They're coming in now," the dispatcher said. There was a sudden burst of yelling. "Police! Hands in the air!" followed by hurried stomps upstairs, a door being kicked in. Then chaos. Furniture being knocked over, one of the men yelling, something crashing. I peeked through a crack in the garage door and saw another officer circling around back. Eventually, a knock on the interior garage door made me flinch. "Police!" a man called. "Are you in there?" I unlocked it. The officer helped me outside. I remember shaking. My palms were slick with sweat. I could barely speak. I just nodded and kept whispering. They were looking for my parents. It took them 10 minutes to bring the two men down in cuffs. They didn't say a word. Not to me, not to the officers, just silence. The police questioned me for hours. My parents rushed back the next morning, terrified. Nothing was stolen. Not a single thing out of place upstairs. But both men had knives on them. Zip ties, too. The cops said they might have been waiting for my parents to return. The theory was that it wasn't a robbery, it was personal. But they never figured out why. The men refused to speak. No fingerprints on record. Fake names on their IDs. They were charged with breaking and entering, but with no evidence of a specific plan. They were out on bail within a few weeks. For months, I didn't sleep properly. Every knock made my stomach turn. I kept the lights on at night. I installed cameras, reinforced locks, started carrying a small knife in my hoodie pocket even inside the house. Nothing ever happened again. But the memory stayed. Not the drama of the police or the fear of hiding. It's that image that haunts me. Two men, standing on my porch in silence, waiting for someone to let them in. I was exhausted the day I got to Bellevue. It was late May, just as the summer heat was starting to creep in but hadn't yet settled in your bones. I'd taken a week off work to visit my older brother Jordan, who lived about 6 hours away in a small city that sat between mountains and farmland. We don't see each other often, maybe twice a year, because we both work weird hours, and he only has a cramped one-bedroom apartment. I wanted space and quiet, and I didn't want to impose. So, instead of booking a hotel, I found a rental home in a suburban neighborhood just 10 minutes from him. It looked decent in the pictures, simple, clean, one story, with a small fenced yard, and the price was about the same as a cheap hotel. I needed the break. I'd been working long weeks at the office, dealing with the mess of a team restructure, and my sleep had been wrecked for months. I was looking forward to peace, good food, and catching up with Jordan. The rental was located in a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind where every lawn was manicured and each house looked like a copy-paste job from a real estate brochure. I arrived around 11 a.m., dropped my stuff inside, and went to grab lunch with Jordan. Afterward, I stopped by a grocery store, picked up enough food and drinks for the week, and returned to the house just before 5 p.m. When I stepped inside, it felt colder than I expected. The AC must have been blasting the whole day. I checked the thermostat. It was set to 67. I turned it up a little and walked around. The house was smaller than it looked in the photos, but it was tidy. Just a couch, a small TV, a queen-sized bed, and a coffee table. No personal touches, no decorations, just the bare minimum for a short stay. Still, it was fine. It would do. I ate something simple for dinner, watched a bit of TV, then went to bed around 9:30 p.m. I was wiped out. But even though my body felt heavy, I couldn't fall asleep. The ceiling fan creaked faintly, and every little noise felt magnified in the silence of a strange house. I must have drifted off sometime after 10:30. I woke up suddenly. It was dark, pitch black, and I had no idea what time it was. I blinked a few times, trying to shake the fog out of my head. My phone was charging on the nightstand, but I didn't reach for it. I just laid there staring at the ceiling. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving down the hallway just outside the bedroom. My entire body froze. I strained my ears, not even breathing. The sound was soft. Bare feet or socks, maybe. But I was sure I heard it. Then, a door closed. Gently. Silence. I don't know how long I stayed in that position, but I eventually forced myself to sit up. My heart was thudding in my chest so hard I thought I might be able to hear it echoing off the walls. I got up quietly and tiptoed to the bedroom door. I opened it and peered into the hallway. At the far end, I could see the front door. It was closed, but not all the way. It was just barely ajar, maybe an inch or two. I stood there trying to understand what I was seeing. Had I locked the door earlier? I thought I had. I was almost sure. I walked slowly toward it, checking each room as I passed. Bathroom, empty. Closet, empty. Living room, nothing. Kitchen, nothing. I didn't see any signs of forced entry. Nothing was missing, nothing was out of place. Just that damn door. I locked it, this time for sure, then called 911. The officers arrived within 10 minutes. 2 men, polite but indifferent. They did a walkthrough and asked me if anything had been stolen. No, I told them, but I swear I heard someone in here. They exchanged glances. One of them said, "Probably just the wind. These older houses settle at night. Could have been creaking." The door was open, I said. I heard footsteps. Well, could have been left open. Maybe didn't latch all the way. Either way, we didn't see any signs of a break-in. They advised me to double-check all the locks, contact the homeowner, and stay alert. That was it. They left. No real investigation, no fingerprint dusting, nothing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stayed on the couch with every light on, clutching my phone like a lifeline. I kept replaying the sound of those footsteps in my head. Every time the refrigerator kicked on or the house creaked, I jumped. The next morning I called the homeowner. His name was Terry and he sounded genuinely concerned. He apologized, said he had no idea how someone could have gotten in, and promised to change the keypad code for the front door. He even offered to send over a handyman to check the locks. I felt a little better after that, enough to get out of the house. I spent the day with Jordan. Lunch, movies, drinks. I didn't mention the details of the night to him. He tends to worry too much. I just said someone may have messed with the door. I got back to the rental around 8:30 p.m. It was already dark, but the house looked exactly the same. I punched in the new code and stepped inside. Silence. I locked the door behind me, turned on every light, and walked through the whole place. Everything was just like I'd left it. Still, I felt uneasy. I sat on the couch and tried to wind down with a movie, but I couldn't relax. Every creak made my neck tense up. Every gust of wind outside made me glance at the windows. I told myself I needed sleep. One full night of rest. That's all. I stood up, took a deep breath, and decided to walk through the house one more time to settle my nerves. I started in the kitchen, checked under the sink, pantry, back door lock. All good. Living room, nothing behind the couch, no weird shadows. Hallway, quiet. Bedroom, closet empty. Bathroom, nothing. Just as I turned to leave the bedroom, I heard running footsteps in the hallway. Fast, heavy, coming straight toward the room. I spun around and saw a man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black, rush past the doorway and slam the bedroom door shut. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared at the door. I heard him moving, through the living room, then the kitchen. Cabinets slamming open, drawers yanked out. Something falling and clattering on the floor. It lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. Then I heard the front door open and close. I didn't move until I was sure it was quiet. Then I called 911 again. This time I was more frantic. I told them a man had been in the house, that I saw him, that he'd searched everything. They arrived faster this time. They brought backup. Terry showed up too. Together, we looked at the damage. The living room was trashed. Cushions were torn off the couch. The coffee table had been flipped. Every kitchen cabinet was open. Plates and food scattered on the floor. It didn't look like a robbery. It looked like the man was searching for something. Terry looked shaken. I don't understand. Nothing's missing. Nothing valuable anyway. One of the officers took notes, but there wasn't much else they could do. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints they could lift. I packed my bags and left that night. I checked into a hotel closer to downtown, called Jordan, and told him everything. I never got a follow-up from the police. I never found out who the man was, what he was looking for, or how he got into the house twice. But what really haunted me later, after the adrenaline wore off and I started thinking back to that first night, was this. I had checked the whole house, every room, every closet. So where had he been hiding? How long had he been in there? Had he been watching me? And what would have happened if I had fallen asleep on that couch? I had just started to feel comfortable in my own skin again. 2 years ago, I left a toxic relationship that drained every bit of joy from me. I moved to the town of Ridgeland, a quiet, tree-lined place in northern Michigan that looked like it had been pulled straight out of a postcard. Small houses with wraparound porches, friendly neighbors who waved but didn't pry, and a sense of stillness I'd been craving. I found a modest one-story house on a corner lot, nothing fancy, just enough for me and my dog Clover. It had a fenced-in backyard, an aging oak tree that creaked during windstorms, and flower beds I never quite managed to keep alive. My job as a remote freelance editor allowed me to work from home, and Clover kept me company during those long, silent hours. By the time this happened, Clover had been gone for 4 months. Cancer. I still found myself checking the back door at night before bed, expecting to let her in. Some habits don't fade even when your heart aches. It was late November, just past Thanksgiving, and Ridgeland was already in full winter mode. The roads were icy, the sidewalks powdered with fresh snow, and nights fell sharply by 5. That evening had been uneventful. I edited a batch of transcripts, microwaved leftover stuffing, and watched reruns of forensic files in bed, wrapped in a fleece blanket. It was around 11:45 p.m. when things changed. The house was still. Just the soft hum of the heater and the low volume of the TV. My bedroom is on the ground floor, tucked toward the back of the house. The window by my bed looks into the backyard. Bare trees and snow that glowed slightly under a motion-sensing floodlight. I remember looking at my phone, 12:03 a.m. I was half asleep drifting when I heard something. Tap. It wasn't loud, just intentional. A small, sharp noise, like a pebble against glass. I froze. The volume on the TV was low enough that I knew I hadn't imagined it. I muted the sound. Then came the next sound, a crunch. Not a twig, not snow. It was the sound of a boot on the wooden boards of the back deck. My stomach sank. I sat up, heart suddenly racing. The blinds were drawn on the back window, but the motion light had come on. A dull, yellow-white glow leaked through the gaps. And then I heard it. Crash. Glass shattered. It came from the dining room window, just a few feet from where I always kept the back door locked. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe for a second. My body reacted before I could think. I jumped out of bed, ran to the bedroom door, and locked it. My hands were trembling as I twisted the tiny latch. I couldn't even process what was happening. My brain scrambled for logic. Maybe a branch? Maybe a raccoon? But I already knew better. The house was being broken into. I spun around and scanned for my phone. It was still on the blanket where I'd just been lying, I grabbed it, nearly dropping it from how slick my hands had become, and immediately dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I whispered. Someone just broke into my house. I'm in my bedroom. I'm alone. Please help. I live at 407 Bellevue Lane, Ridgeland, Michigan. Please. Stay on the line with me. Are you safe right now? I nodded, realizing she couldn't see that. My bedroom door is locked. I don't know if they know I'm in here. Officers are on the way. Do not leave the room. Stay quiet. Stay calm. Can you tell me what you hear? My heart was pounding so hard it was all I could hear, but then, muffled, footsteps on the hardwood. They were slow, deliberate. They were inside the house. The woman on the phone was calm, guiding me to breathe, to focus, to tell her anything I could. And then the footsteps grew louder, closer. They were in the hallway, right outside my bedroom door. I stopped speaking. My breath hitched. Ma'am, are you still there? I muted the call. I placed the phone on the floor under my nightstand, and then I backed away as quietly as I could, pressing myself into the farthest corner of the room, behind the tall dresser. The footsteps stopped. The doorknob jiggled. Then, bang! A hard fist hit the door. Open the door! A man's voice yelled. Deep, angry, demanding. I flinched, every nerve in my body screaming. He tried the knob again, rattled it, then silence. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I remember my mouth being so dry that I couldn't swallow. I looked toward my window. Maybe I could open it, jump out. But I was barefoot. The snow was thick. And what if he was waiting? Another bang, this time with something solid. The door thudded, shook, but held. I backed into the corner again, shaking, silently mouthing prayers even though I hadn't gone to church in years. And then, nothing. I waited. It felt like an eternity. The silence was almost worse. Minutes passed, or maybe just seconds, I can't be sure. Then, the back door again. A soft squeak. Then, nothing. More time passed. Then I heard it. Voices. Outside. Ridgeland Police Department. If anyone's inside, announce yourself. I didn't know if it was real. I didn't trust my own ears. I crept forward, unlocked my door slowly, hand trembling on the knob. The hallway light was on now. I peeked around the corner and saw a uniformed officer, flashlight in hand. They found me crouched in the hallway, sobbing. They told me he was caught just 1 block away, trying to break into another home. He had a criminal record: burglary, assault, drug charges. He'd been released 3 weeks earlier. I never got his name. I never asked. I didn't want to know. I had every lock in the house replaced. I installed a new security system with sensors on every window and door, and motion detectors inside. I adopted another dog from the shelter. Her name's Maple, and she sleeps at the foot of my bed now. But I haven't really slept since that night. Some nights I wake up gasping, thinking I heard glass again. I never sit with my back to the hallway anymore. I carry pepper spray in every room. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my door hadn't been locked. Would he have stopped? Would he have left? Or would I have become another face on the evening news? No one tells you that surviving something doesn't always feel like survival. Sometimes it just feels like waiting. Waiting for the next noise, the next crash, the next shadow. But I'm still here. And I lock that door every single night. I never thought living alone would feel this heavy. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't always like this. When I first moved into that 1-bedroom apartment in Brentfield, Oregon, I loved the quiet. I loved being able to cook dinner in my pajamas, watch late-night documentaries, and let dishes pile up if I felt like it. After my breakup with Tyler last spring, I needed a reset. Brentfield wasn't too far from my job at the call center, and the rent was within reach, especially for a first-floor unit. It's not a fancy place. The complex Pine Ridge Estates has this generic suburban feel: identical beige buildings, tiny lawns, and a parking lot full of faded hatchbacks and tired SUVs. My building sits toward the back near the woods, and even though the property manager insists that gives it extra privacy, it just means no one really walks by unless they live here. For almost a year, things were fine, boring even, just how I liked it. Until last week. It was Thursday night and I was exhausted. We'd had a brutal day at the office. Half the calls were angry customers, and the other half were too confusing to even follow. I remember thinking on the drive home that I'd earned some serious couch time. Maybe a pizza, definitely something stupid to watch. So that's exactly what I did. By 9:30, I was on my third slice of pepperoni, stretched out on the couch with a throw blanket wrapped around my legs and the circle playing in the background. I remember checking my phone, 9:54 p.m., and thinking I'd probably fall asleep right there. Then, a knock at the door. Just one. Firm director. I paused the show, letting the silence settle. I live alone, and in almost a year, no one, not even once, had ever knocked on my apartment door. Not even for the wrong unit, not even by mistake. I looked at the door. My hallway light was off, but the faint glow from the TV lit enough for me to see. I stayed still. Another knock. My heartbeat ticked up, not because I was scared, yet, but because it felt off. I stood up slowly and walked to the door, careful not to make noise even though I knew that was probably irrational. I didn't turn the knob. Instead, I looked through the peephole. A man stood there. At least I think it was a man. He was wearing this bizarre mask. An old man's face, wrinkled, sagging, unnaturally pink. Almost believable from a distance, but wrong when you looked closer. The eyes behind the holes weren't old. They were watching, wide and steady, right at the door. I didn't move. He didn't either. Then he knocked again. Louder this time. 3 sharp raps. I backed away from the door, almost tripping on my slipper. I didn't say anything, didn't yell, didn't ask, "Who is it?" Because something in my body already knew this wasn't normal. This wasn't someone lost or confused. I stayed still for a few minutes. No more knocks, no footsteps. I peeked through the peephole again. Gone. I tried to play it cool. Told myself it was some stupid prank. Maybe someone's teenage kid trying to be funny. I texted my friend Alyssa about it, half laughing in the message so it didn't sound like I was freaked out. She responded fast. Alyssa, 10:17 p.m. That's creepy as hell. Please tell me your door's locked. It was. I didn't answer the door. I didn't go outside. I even went around and made sure every window was latched shut. Then I turned the TV back on. But my eyes weren't really on the screen. They were on the door. 20 minutes later, another knock. Same exact rhythm. I jumped off the couch and crept toward the peephole. He was back. Same mask. Same stiff posture. Only this time, he didn't just knock. He grabbed the door handle. I heard it rattle, then twist. He jiggled it, tried pushing forward, like he thought maybe it would just swing open. "Hey!" I shouted from behind the door, not sure why I even said it. "Get the hell out of here." He froze, and then slowly, he turned and walked away again. I waited 5 minutes this time before checking. Empty hallway. I called Alyssa. "Call the cops," she said. "Right now. That's not normal." "I know, but he's gone now." "You don't know that." I hesitated. "If he comes back, I will." She wasn't happy with that, but I promised I'd call. I even kept my phone in my hand when I sat back down, volume on max. It was after 11:30 p.m. when the third knock came. This time it was loud, not aggressive, but deliberate. I didn't move. I was shaking now, hands, legs, even my jaw. He didn't try the handle this time. He knocked twice, then nothing. Eventually, I crept to the peephole. Gone again. This time, I did something different. I opened the hallway camera app on my phone. Our building's security feed is garbage. Grainy, black and white clips from 1998 probably. but it covers the common hall. He wasn't there anymore. I locked my phone and tried to breathe. Around midnight, I was in my bedroom, changing into pajamas, when I heard something. Not knocking. Not movement. A feeling. A sudden wave of pressure, like someone was watching. I walked to the window, which overlooks a strip of grass between the building and the parking lot. The blinds were cracked open slightly. And there he was, standing beneath the street lamp, mask on, facing my window, not moving, just watching. I dropped the blinds and stepped back, heart pounding in my throat. I didn't go back to the couch this time. I locked the bedroom door and sat in the corner with my phone. This time I did call the police. The dispatcher was kind. She asked if I could see him now. I said no. She said a patrol car would swing through the complex and drive around. I asked if I should open the door. Not unless it's us, she said. I waited. By 1 a.m. I saw the red and blue lights pass outside. A few minutes later, a knock came. Gentle. A voice. "Ma'am, it's Officer DeWitt with Brentfield PD." I checked the peephole before opening. He was real. Badge and everything. I told him everything. He walked around outside, checked the lot, talked into his radio, came back 10 minutes later. "We didn't find anyone," he said. "Doesn't mean he wasn't here. These kinds of things can happen around Halloween sometimes." "It's February." He looked at me. "Right." He offered to file a report, but said unless the guy came back or there was damage, there wasn't much they could do. Still, he was nice. Told me to call again if anything else happened. Nothing happened for the next few days. I told my landlord. She brushed it off. "Probably just some stupid TikTok thing," she said. "Kids with too much time." But I bought a camera, one of those doorbell kinds. Installed it myself on Saturday. Sunday night, I checked the footage just out of habit. Nothing during the day. But then I saw something. At 3:41 a.m., the camera picked up motion. A man in the old man mask. He stood at my door. Didn't knock. Didn't touch anything. Just stood. For 38 minutes. Then walked away. I don't sleep much now. I moved my bed to the opposite wall, away from the windows. I installed cameras in the back too. Every noise at night makes my heart race. I haven't seen him again. But sometimes I wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and I get up and I check the live camera feed. And I feel like maybe he's just outside of the frame, watching, waiting. And next time, maybe he won't knock. Maybe he'll just come in. I was 10 years old when it happened, though the details still cling to my memory like wet leaves after a storm. Back then, we lived in a one-story house in the quiet little town of Millstone, a place where neighbors knew each other by name, and people didn't even lock their doors half the time. My parents had moved there when I was 7, hoping to leave behind the stress of the city. My dad worked for the electric company and was often on call, while my mom worked as a dental assistant a few towns over. Our home sat near the edge of town, with woods behind the backyard and a narrow gravel road that barely saw a car after dark. It wasn't a huge house, just 3 bedrooms, a tiny living room, and an open kitchen that backed up to the yard. My room was the farthest one down the hallway, painted a calming blue, with glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. I never liked being alone. Even back then, something about a quiet, empty house made my skin crawl. Every tick of the old wall clock, every creak in the floorboards, seemed amplified at night, but I also knew I had to get used to it. My parents didn't leave me alone often, but they said I was old enough now. That night was maybe the 3rd or 4th time they had done it. They were going to dinner with my dad's boss and promised to be home by 10 o'clock. I tried to act brave. I told them I'd be fine, and even joked about eating all the ice cream in the freezer. My mom kissed the top of my head and reminded me where the emergency numbers were stuck on the fridge. My dad double-checked that all the doors were locked, front, back, and side, and gave me the usual instructions. Don't open the door for anyone, don't go outside. Call us if anything feels off. At first, everything was fine. 8:03 p.m. I was curled up on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket, with a bowl of microwave popcorn that I had probably burnt a little. Home Alone 2 was playing on the TV. Not the most reassuring movie choice in hindsight, but I liked it. The living room light was on, but the kitchen and hallway were dark. It felt cozy. Safe. I remember even laughing at some of the parts I'd seen 100 times before. I had just gotten to the part where Kevin rigs the house with traps when I heard something. A soft metallic rattle. It came from the kitchen, specifically near the back window. I paused the movie, my ears immediately tuning in. But the sound didn't come again. I figured it was probably Milo, our gray tabby cat. He liked to jump on the counter and knock over whatever he could find. I even called out to him. "Milo, knock it off, dude!" No answer. But then again, cats don't answer. I unpaused the movie and sank back into the couch. A few minutes later, there it was again. Louder this time, a scratching sound. Then a dull thump, like something bumping into the sink. I sat up straighter. This time I muted the TV. The sound repeated, soft, but definitely not just the wind. My heart started to beat faster. I told myself it was still Milo, maybe messing around with the curtains or something, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Milo?" I called again, louder. "You better not be in the sink." Nothing. 8:19 p.m. I got up, taking slow steps toward the kitchen. The way our house was laid out, you had to walk through the dining room to get to the kitchen. As I got closer, I noticed how quiet everything had become. No hum from the fridge, no ticking clock. Like the house itself was holding its breath. The kitchen was dark, save for the faint yellow glow from the porch light outside the back window. I could see the counter, the sink, and that's when I noticed the window. It was open, not wide but enough. Our windows were the kind that had screens that slid into place from the inside. But there was no screen anymore. Just the open black square of night, and something even worse. The window moved. Someone was pushing it open further. I froze, unable to breathe. A hand appeared, grimy, rough, with dirt under the fingernails. Then another, and then the top of a man's head, his dark hair just barely visible. In that moment, my body reacted before my mind did. I turned and ran. 8:20 p.m. I flew across the dining room and through the living room, nearly tripping on the edge of the rug. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see anymore. I didn't want to see what came next. I tore up the hallway and burst into my room, slamming the door behind me so hard that my poster fell off the wall. There was no phone in my room. I didn't have a cell phone back then. Most kids didn't. The house phone was on the kitchen counter, a cordless one that I now realized I should have brought with me. I was trapped, and I knew it. I pushed my dresser in front of the door with all my strength. It didn't fit flush, but it was better than nothing. I dove into bed and pulled the blanket over my head like it was armor. I plugged my ears, squeezed my eyes shut, and told myself over and over, "It's a dream. It's not real. It's a dream. You're gonna wake up. Mom and Dad will be home soon." I don't know how long I stayed that way. Time seemed to move in slow motion. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear anything. Not even breathing. Just the sound of my own heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out. 9:53 p.m. I must have drifted off or zoned out because I didn't notice the car pull into the driveway. But the front door opening jolted me awake, or back to reality. At first I thought it was him, but then I heard my mom's voice. "James? Honey? We're home." I nearly cried. I ripped the blanket off and jumped out of bed, but I didn't move the dresser yet. I just called out, "Mom, I'm in my room." She came running down the hall a few seconds later. "Why's your dresser? What happened?" I told her everything in a blur of words, my voice shaking. Her face went from confused to terrified in seconds. She ran to get my dad, who was already halfway inside the kitchen. He called out, saying, "Windows open back here, screen's gone." I didn't go downstairs. Later that night, the cops came about 15 minutes later. I was sitting on the couch wrapped in the same blanket, Milo finally showing up and curling against my leg like nothing had happened. 2 officers searched the entire house and the backyard with flashlights, even going out into the woods behind the property. They didn't find anyone. They didn't even find the screen. The back window had signs of being pried. There were scratches on the windowsill and dirt smudges where the man had tried to hoist himself up. But other than that, nothing was taken. Nothing was broken. Nothing else had been touched. The officer, a middle-aged man named Officer Kent, sat with me and my parents in the living room. "He may have thought the house was empty," he said. "You seeing him might have been enough to scare him off." I just nodded. I didn't want to think about what might have happened if I hadn't seen him in time. For a while, I didn't want to be alone. My parents understood. They let me sleep in their room for a few nights. My dad installed locks on every window, even bars on the back ones. We got a better security system, motion lights, new locks. I didn't watch movies alone for a long time. Every creak in the house felt like a warning. Every shadow looked like a man trying to come back in. I still don't know who he was or what he wanted. Maybe he was a drifter. Maybe someone from out of town. Maybe he had watched our house and waited for a night like that. But I never forgot that moment, standing in the dining room, seeing him coming through the window like some living nightmare. That night taught me something important. It only takes one moment for your whole idea of home to change. One sound, one open window, one stranger. After that, even silence can feel dangerous. And sometimes, being alone at home is all it takes for horror to find its way in.